Hi, my name is Julia, and I am a professional EOS implementer. And today I have a very special guest for you. I interviewed Chris Smith, the founder of TheCoTeam, based out of New York. And TheCoTeam helps with the recruiting and hiring, basically helping you find the right person for the right seat. Chris runs his business on EOS, so he's well versed in all of the EOS tools and the disciplines, as you'll hear in the interview. And so Chris does a really great job breaking things down, helping you understand how to interview people for culture fit, how to actually find people who want, and have the capacity to do the job really well. These are core concepts to EOS. And so it was really cool seeing an expert go deeper into that application. So I hope you enjoy the interview. Thank you so much. So I am so excited to talk to Chris from TheCoTeam today. Welcome, Chris. You and I go back a little while from the same industry, and I've been seeing all the work that you've been doing from, afar, seeing how you've been helping some of my clients and former partners. But I'd love to start off by hearing from you. What is TheCoTeam? Who are you? What do you do? What kind of problems do you solve?
Sure. I used to be in your same industry as you mentioned, as the custom installation business. People put technology into buildings, and we were constantly kind of struggling with the people problem. And when I left that business and started up a consultancy, I kept hearing back from all of my clients around people problems. And it was, hey, we're having this really hard time finding the right people that we want to grow, or we've got folks in our current business and we're not really happy and we'd replace them, but we can't really find the people that we need to replace them. So I kind of
Mm-hmm.
feel stuck. And so what I looked at was the current set of models that were out there around recruitment and things like that. And I always just thought it was broken. I just thought it wasn't right. The price point was too high. The success rate wasn't super great. And so I just saw this immediate need. And so what I started thinking about was helping companies hire more at a consultancy level. And when we started to plan out what that would look like, it was really a workflow. And that workflow became the process that we use today to help companies hire. And so, we became the people that solve the people problem.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. So at EOS, we dug into the data and we found that 83% of issues, the root cause, is a people issue. So it's huge and it comes up so much, obviously.
I believe it. I
Yeah,
believe it.
yeah. Um, okay, so let's start at, I guess, the beginning of the process. So figuring out what the company actually needs to hire for. Um, Can you talk a little bit about your approach or your philosophy on that for figuring out what you
Sure.
need?
I think a lot of people almost immediately feel stuck from the get go. They're like, who should I hire? Like, what is that person? What do they
Yeah.
do? What are they called? What's the title? And it feels very ominous and big. I think the great part about EOS is its ability to sit down and build the accountability chart. And so I love the concept of sitting down and fleshing out a new seat and
Yeah.
aligning the particular task functions on that seat to say, this is what that person would do. And by very nature, you're pulling those functions off of someone else's seat, which is great.
Yeah.
When you then start to look at that seat, don't worry about what it's called. Don't worry about what the job title would be at this moment. Just realize you're trying to get these things off someone else's plate or someone's plate, plural, into one person. Once you go to that level, now what you can start to say is, does all of those things put together as a whole exist as a human? And that's a
Yeah.
really important distinction because what we don't want to do is pull 20 different types of things from 20 different types of seats
Yeah.
and say, it would be really great if someone just did all this.
Yeah.
I think if you could sit down and start to think about that, then what you would say is, now what represents 80% of their time? And you'll really find that there's 20% of the list that represents 80% of the time.
Hmm.
And invariably, that is a function, that is a type of seat or person. And then you can go search for that. I think that's really the first step for most companies.
Yeah. Yeah. When we're doing the accountability chart exercise, identifying the seat and, like you said, the roles within that seat, there's the unicorn test of, like you said, is this a real person or is it
Right.
an actual unicorn? The unicorns are out there, but can you actually consistently find them?
It's hard to scale
Probably
a
not.
business if you're looking for those kind of. The other way to
Yeah.
think about it is like the cat's eye. Hey, there's two types of seats. We're trying to find the blend of those things.
Yeah.
What's the cat's eye of that overlap? And I think what you really find is that if you want to build a scalable organization of any type, doesn't matter the industry, we can't be looking in that cat's eye very often.
Yeah, you mentioned the ampersand red flag. What is that? Tell me about that.
Oh, this is really great. It would be really great if this person did this and this. Right? Immediately, whenever I see a job title with the word and in it, I already have a flag in my mind
Yeah.
because there are times when these things naturally overlap, and then most of the time they don't. And
Yeah.
so then what we really sit down and say is, so what is it? And is that overlap common? So, for instance, in a controller seat, it's
Mm-hmm.
not unheard of to have a financial controller also manage HR functions. That's really normal. But you wouldn't have a financial controller also sitting down doing fill in the other thing. And so I
Yeah.
think that question of the natural overlaps is okay. And the things that are outside of that, you have to be really careful about.
Yeah. Where do you think that stems from? Like, why do you think leaders, business owners come up with that ampersand job description?
Pain that they're in a position of
Yeah.
pain and they want to get out of
Yeah.
the position of pain. It is a natural response to the issue that they face today. And I think what they're just saying is, wouldn't it be great if someone could magically take care of all of these problems for me?
Yeah.
And I just look at that and I go, I understand why it's happening. It's just not a practical solution to the problem.
Yeah. I also see it happening when a company is growing. So early on, the types of people that you bring into a really small, growing, fast moving company are the types of people that are like, yeah, I'll wear that hat. I'll wear that hat. And they're just like go to people. And then as the company grows and people actually need to divide and conquer, that's you need to actually have people who specialize in things. So I think it's like that, just that legacy hangover as well of like, oh, well, we had those multifunctional people before. We could probably keep it that way. Like, why couldn't I find it?
You'd really love to find more of those go-to people, and I don't disagree with that at all. Who
Yeah.
wouldn't?
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, do we believe that that is the growth plan and strategy? Do we believe that that is somehow a job post that we could put out there and find humans for? Do we think we could interview for that strategy? I look at that and I think that's actually where you start to realize, oh, okay, we're going to have to get a bit more focused than that.
Yeah.
Um, and then what covers the mass and scale of the problem? And then treat anything else as a nice to have or a benefit or a plus if you were to also find it, as opposed to I'm not going to talk to somebody if I don't find those also or pluses.
Yeah. What do you mean by the mass and scale of the problem?
Yeah, we like to think about what are the 20% of things that take 80% of the time.
Yeah.
What are the
Okay.
20% of these
It's
job functions that take
core. Yeah. The
the
core job. Yeah. Okay.
edge case stuff? I'll teach that. The edge case stuff,
Yeah.
I might reassign.
Yeah.
But the core of it, that should be a real title that's searchable in a market that has the ability to do a case study around it, right? All those types of things will tell you its core. All the other stuff, those are the edge case things. Just let go of those for now, and we'll treat those as nice to haves if somebody magically has them.
Yeah. So that's a nice transition into the next question, next topic that I have for you around finding people who actually GWC that seat, get it, want
Yeah.
it, and have the capacity. So, for those people who aren't familiar with EOS concepts, can you do a quick breakdown of what GWC is?
I love this idea. It works equally as well internally as it does when you're going to hire, and I think it's a really
Yeah.
important foundational toolkit to get really comfortable with. So the GWC is gets it, wants it, and has capacity. The gets it is, do they understand the seat, right? Like, so for instance, if I was to hire for a controller, financial controller,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really looking for somebody who came from a COO or operational background, you'd likely say they don't really get how to be a financial controller. At least not most of the time.
Yeah.
And so the gets it is kind of the fundamental. The wants it is the desire. And I think that if you see job applicants, you would reasonably say that they would desire that role. They applied for that role. Well, the common version of that internally is I would like to promote internally from someone from this seat over to this
Mm-hmm.
seat. And inherently, I think what you see is business owners or leadership teams saying, oh, let's just bring Bob over. Bob's good at everything. Like Bob will do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah.
maybe Bob doesn't want to do it, right? Like maybe Bob really actually is happy where he's at. Maybe this would make Bob really miserable. And so the question that we always used to ask was, has anyone asked Bob if Bob wants it? and so and it's a really
Yeah,
great question. So on the hiring side, I think it's a little bit easier. On
yeah.
the internal promotion, I would definitely consider it. And the capacity question is really, I think, a variety of things, but we always thought about it in function of time. So are we giving the person the time to do all of the things that are
Mm,
outlined in this seat? So for instance, if I put 20 times the amount of things onto the seat, no one has the capacity to do that. And so that's not a person who understands it or desires it. It's there's no way for them to be successful in it. The other question for the capacity question is bandwidth across multiple seats. And so when we start talking about, oh, Bob will
yes.
do it, well, maybe Bob actually gets it
Yep.
and wants it, but he's already busy in two other seats over here. There's no way for him to take on the third. And
Mm,
so the GWC exercise is super powerful on so many different levels. And it really then helps flesh out when we might need a new seat and a new hire. Hey, nobody has the capacity to take this on. I think we're in the hiring business. And so I
yeah.
think that that's really a really good kind of foundational exercise for teams to run through.
Yeah. Yeah. And as far as people sitting in multiple seats, it happens. But it's also really helpful to get clarity as a team. Okay, if this person is going to sit in two separate seats, what percentage of their time do we expect them to be sitting in project management versus this other new seat? Because there's so much conflict that can happen, well-meaning conflict of like, hey, you're not doing your job. It's like, well, I thought I was only spending 25% of my time on project
Yeah.
management. Now you're saying 75%? Okay, we can make this happen, but let's have the conversation. Yeah.
Absolutely agree. And then I think this question is, you're not doing your job. Well, which job? I have many jobs, right? So
Yeah.
these questions about time splits, I think, matter quite a lot. And sometimes what you realize people are doing is they're hoping that this strategy could work. But when you actually really dig into it, you go, the split like this won't do what we need. It won't get done what our objective is. We're going to have to look at a different strategy. Maybe that's hiring. Maybe that's a different person. Maybe
Yeah.
it's splitting it amongst two or three different people, whatever the question might be. But they're really, really powerful. And I think when teams are sitting together, being honest with themselves in the exercise, the right strategy will emanate out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to the get it, finding the right human for the job. How how do you suss that out in the interview process? And like, do you coach your clients on how to interview people for the right human?
There's two parts of this. There's the work that we do during the interview, and then there's the work that our client will do during their interview series, because they are different types of interviews.
Yep.
Both are necessary. In our portion of it, I very much think about who would I want to see on a team, who's got really great communication skills, who fits the core value stuff, the right
Mm-hmm.
person kind of conversation of the right person, right seat. And then I really start to think about disposition,
Okay.
because there are certain types of people who are wired for certain types of seats. In other words, an easy one would be, if we're thinking about a salesperson, they have to be hungry.
Yeah.
So if you show me a salesperson who lacks hunger, you haven't found a salesperson. And
Right.
so, there's an example of the get it. Like those are people who have a dopamine hit fix when they go and make a sale. That's who
Yeah.
gets that. And so that's who I'm looking for. I'm looking for that type of individual.
Yeah.
When we start to think about finance people, we're looking for people who are highly analytical, but also have a functional technical background.
Yeah.
You might be the nicest person on the planet, have all the core values. You might even been a loyal employee somewhere, but if you don't have the financial training to do the seat, you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's the combination of disposition and fundamental technical that's required for people to be successful. We're looking for that during the initial filter.
Okay.
Once we then move them along to the next round of interview, now what we need to be doing is we think two things quite well, digging deeper into both sides of that. From the fundamentals of the person, there's a book by Eric Herrenkohl called How to Hire A Players. Really fantastic book. I'm a super big fan of it. I saw him speak
Excellent.
once at a Vistage meeting, and easy to take this back and implement it into your business. It's free, right? Free to do. And so I would highly recommend this. But what it pulls out are the traits that are going to make someone successful in a seat. Nothing about the technical yet.
Mm-hmm.
Once you found the right human with that right disposition and trait set, you know you're on a really great path towards that. Now we need a technical assessment.
Yep.
Now, depending upon what the position is, that technical assessment might look different from position to position to position, but
Mm-hmm.
we need some way to flesh out the reality of it. So if we're talking about a technician, someone who, I don't know, pulls wire and terminates it, there's a way to test for that. If we're
Right.
talking about a finance person, there's a way to test for that. And so what we're looking for is who needs to administer that test and validate their skill sets. And if we can't do the person validation with the AB player side and we can't do the technical validation, the likelihood that we come out the other side with a potential problem is high. If we can at least validate that, we'll stop those people at the gate.
Right.
And while we might then have to continue on the search a little bit longer, at least we haven't brought somebody in who shouldn't be there.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about the concept of hiring slowly and firing quickly. But you made a really great point that there is a world where you can take way too long to hire. So what's the sweet spot for actually pressure testing all these things? What's that sweet spot for the Goldilocks zone
Oh
for
my gosh,
hiring?
what a great question. Expeditious. So let's be respectful of people's time. I
Yeah.
think there's a really big takeaway. These people who are applying for your role have families, they have mortgages, they want to be working. And so what we can't be doing is delaying that process.
Yeah.
It's unfair, it's unreasonable. So, what's fair and reasonable? So, my first question is, do you have a documented process for how you plan to move somebody through your machine in an interview cycle?
Yeah.
What is a reasonable amount of time to book an interview with an applicant? What's a reasonable amount of time to spend in that interview?
Mm-hmm.
What's a reasonable amount of time for quantity of interviews and the cadence between those interviews? The story I always like to tell was when I met my then girlfriend, now wife, on our very first date. At the very end of it, I set up our second date, and at the end of our second date, I set up our third date, and so on and so forth. And now we're married.
You
And
closed
like,
the
if you really
deal.
you close the deal, and I
Yeah.
think at that point, the thing to be thinking about is what's that cadence like in your hiring process to
Mm-hmm.
get to yes or no. Either way is fine, but so that it's not indefinite. I've seen people take months to go
Yeah.
from an interview cycle to a hire, and that's not okay.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be more decisive than that. And if the problem is in the process and the process isn't allowing us to be decisive, well, then let's fix the process so that we can't be. That question about hire slow, fire fast is not go take months to make a decision. That is not what that statement means.
Yeah.
It means be discerning about who you hire. And once you realize that something made it through the gate that shouldn't, fix the problem.
Yeah.
That to me is, I think, a reasonable statement there.
Yeah. Let's talk about the concept of GWC, the seat of interviewing people, because I think one of the root issues of that, this lack of process or struggling to find the right people, is that you don't have people who are the right people to be running that process. So how do you coach people on that? Do you give people feedback on if you think they should be hiring within the company?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. The concept around who's responsible for hiring within a business, I don't know that people really treat it like a job function. It is
Mm.
a skill. It needs to be taught. Most people have never learned it or read anything about it. They're 100% trying their best, right? They don't want to
Oh,
make a bad
yeah.
decision,
Yeah.
but I don't know how many of those folks are actually, seasoned at it, to be quite
Mm-hmm.
honest. And so I think there's two components to it. I think there's the human component, the idea of the traits or that AV player or core values, those types of things. But then I think that there is the idea about the technical. I don't know how you'd have an HR generalist sitting down interviewing a
Right.
software engineer.
Yeah,
I just don't know how you do that, right? Like that is a very technical type of role. And by the way, how's that HR generalist going to interview a CFO? Right? It's so I think this question about interviewing cycles really matters. And it's not to say that you can't have a preemptive interview, kind of like what we do, and that's what the
for
generalist does,
sure.
and then we move into a next round. But I think this question about so what's that process? Who gets involved when? What is their training? So to your point about the GWC, if I think about this, I always like to have two people in the room during an in-person interview. I think
Okay.
it's the hiring manager, the person whoever is hiring this individual, and a second person. And we have a strategy, and both those people in the room are following that strategy with one applicant. And as you're going through it, you're then comparing notes. But both of those people have a game plan, they have a
Mm,
playbook. Now, the question is on the GWC side, gets it? Can they read the playbook and do they understand the playbook for the interview? The
yep.
wants it? Hey, man, I'd rather be out in the field doing such and such, or I'd rather be over here working on this thing.
Yeah.
Well, then they don't probably shouldn't be in there interviewing because their brain is somewhere else.
And they're
And the
probably not going to
capacity.
like dig in and ask really good follow-up questions and flag things. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, like being present matters. And
Yeah.
can you be present for this process? It's really important. By the way, there's many owner operators that can't be present for this process. Let's be really clear.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah.
busy thinking about being somewhere else. They're late to an interview with an applicant. Like,
Mm-hmm.
can you be here for the sole purpose of nailing this interview cycle for this applicant? Like, think about that for a minute. And
Yeah.
I've watched people not do that. So the capacity question is also part of this wants it thing. The capacity question for many of these folks who are in an interview cycle is I'm too busy to do
Or
it.
I don't know how to, just the nuts and bolts. Like it is, people
Yeah.
can be trained on how to ask better questions, but if they just don't have the time, that's obviously an issue.
Totally. And I think for most people in the capacity question, I mean, yes, maybe there's a training question there, but
Yeah.
I would think for a lot of people, it's fundamentally time, right? This is a time consuming process by its
Yeah.
very nature. And so I think a lot of people would argue, I don't have the time to give it.
What do you say to that? Like,
Outsource it.
okay. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, this is a you get what you put into it kind of
for sure.
equation. And I think
Yeah.
some people don't have the time or energy for this, and that's okay. Then I think they need to delegate that.
Yep. Yeah.
Like if this isn't the thing that you've got the time or interest or toolkit to do, please delegate to somebody or outsource or what have you. I think that's a really astute observation though for an owner operator, a manager, or what have you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't my highest and best use. Let somebody else do this.
Right. And like you said, being present for the interview process is so important. You know, I'm thinking of some people who are just trying to survive. Like they're the person interviewing and they're trying to survive the interview as if they're in the hot seat. And they're asking like softball questions like, hey, so, you know, these are the job responsibilities. What do you think? What do you think about that? How do you feel about that? It's really, really funny. And I do think, let's assume that that type of person really does want to do a good job, just slowing down and actually trying to be present and thinking ahead about what questions could give real, true insight into whether or not this person matches this role. Like just thinking
Absolutely.
ahead, planning ahead, even just 15 minutes, 10 minutes thinking about just thoughtful, curious questions will go a long way.
The way that we actually do it is those questions. So when we talk about AV player, what we're looking for are about 7 traits of what would make this seat at this price point successful. We
Mm,
actually have 3 questions per trait. We have 21 questions
excellent.
on a sheet of paper
Yeah.
already written out for just this one seat. Now imagine we can pick different seats. So for a
Yeah.
controller, we just need one of those. But when we think about, I don't know, a technician where you've got an entry level, mid level, and a senior,
Yep.
we have 3 different sets of traits.
Oh,
We
that's
have
excellent.
21 questions per each one of those things. And the thought is if we're really eliciting out a response that tells us who that person truly is, we now can make a really decisive decision one way or the other at the end of 1 hour.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I want to do another interview, or I'm ready to hire, or this is not the person.
Right. Right.
That's the level of decisiveness we're trying to get to after each interview cycle.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I'm sure just developing those questions also helps to pressure test the job description in the first place and the accountability chart.
Absolutely. And the other one would be the outgoing person, because usually there was someone in the seat before it,
Yeah.
or
Yep.
what have you. You know what didn't go well.
Yeah.
So you know the type of thing you're looking for. And
Yeah.
what's really great is use that moment of pain to inform the next moment of opportunity to build
Yeah.
out that question set.
Yeah. Definitely. A huge part of hiring is actually figuring out, will they fit the culture? Do they share and exhibit the company's true core values, unique core values? So how do you approach that with the companies you work with?
Same idea. We actually start from Patrick Lencioni's ideal team player. So
Okay.
generically, we move across these because we tend to agree with them about
Mm-hmm.
hungry, humble, and smart. And we'll get into specific core values in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about ambition, being down to earth, and then high emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Those are fundamental core values, right? They are ubiquitous. They're not unique to this company or that company. You would generally say we'd like humans who exhibit those traits. So when we're actually interviewing somebody in a 30-minute Zoom, we ask the question based on the book by Patrick Lencioni, The Ideal Team Player, talks about people who are three things: hungry,
Mm-hmm.
humble, and smart. Between
Mm-hmm.
ambition, being down to earth, and high emotional intelligence, which one's your biggest weakness?
Ooh.
There's no yes or no answer to that. They don't
Yep.
have a pre-canned, response to it. We've now interviewed them for 20 or 25 minutes. We have kind of a read on them a
Mm-hmm.
bit. Now I'm looking for them to introspectively think about who they are and give me an answer back in plain English. And they have to do it in about 20 seconds. It's a very hard question. I believe if someone can't answer that, I won't let them sweep a floor at a business.
Right.
And so when I sit down and I think about who I want on a team, that's the level of human I want on a team.
Yeah.
So that's who we're looking for. That's what gets us to that top 2 or 3% of people. So now, if they pass that, when we get to core values, the core values aren't much different conceptually than the traits that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
What are the questions that you do ask specific to each of your core values so that you know that you found the person? Now, I think what's interesting about it is we can't ask a question that's so on the nose. I'll pick an easy
Exactly.
one. We want everyone who's on time, right? Like we don't want people who
Yeah.
are late.
What do you think about being on time?
Exactly.
Pro
Are you always on
or
time?
against?
Yeah, you can't ask it.
Yeah.
But what you can say is, tell me how you plan your day. Tell
Mm.
me how you feel about when you miss a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
What's the tool set that you use to make sure that you're organized?
Yeah.
You'll start to hear people talk about themselves in interesting ways, and it will give you a read on a spectrum of where they are about that given type of trait. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think you can do the exact same thing with your core values, right? Define what a question would be that elicits a response that's not so on the nose,
Yeah.
that really gives you an intuition about who they are in that core value. The other one is storytelling is really great. So can you tell me a
Yes.
story about fill in the blank?
Mm-hmm.
And in telling that story, it would include the component of your core value that you were looking for by its very nature.
I think really thinking about your core values and peeling it back and understanding, okay, what are the associated traits or symptoms of that core value or anti-core value is really, I mean, obviously helpful. I did something similar at One Vision. One of our core values is EQ, not just IQ. Happened on a really good question about that. Question where you can really get to the heart of, like, if someone has high emotional intelligence. And it wasn't even about emotional intelligence. It was like what you said, it was about self-awareness. People who have high emotional intelligence are more self-aware. And then you take that even further, and people who are more self-aware when they're telling stories, they're just comfortable talking about stuff that just didn't go so well. So I remember asking a candidate at a very, very late stage in the interview process, like right before the rubber stamp went on, I asked her this question, and she completely bombed, because the facade that she had really fell. And so it was really fascinating. So I started using it a lot. Basically it's talk about a time when you let your emotions get the better of you in a work environment and what happened. And so she was kind of bragging about the negative impacts that she had on another person, and it was just really, really cringy moment for this final stage of the interview process. So ever since then, I've always been looking for, like, what are those small, the breadcrumb trails that lead to the core of that core value.
So there are some, I am generally opposed to just boilerplate dumping things into AI and saying, do something for me, right? Like,
Yeah.
I get that there's some value in
Yeah.
utilizing AI as a component in a strategy.
Hmm.
In these question writings, great opportunity.
For sure.
Because what it will do is it will spit out 15 or 20 different questions per thing you're looking to do. And one or two or three of those will be awesome. And the others will be like, yeah, not so much.
Yeah.
But these right here get us to that. Here's the other part, it's iterative. So we're going
Hmm.
to do it and we're going to see what happens. And what you
Yes.
do is as you try it, you might realize, oh, it didn't really elicit the response I needed. It didn't
Hmm.
really tell me what I needed. So that question isn't sitting correctly with the recipient to
Mm.
give me what I need on its output. Okay, got it. We're going to try a different one.
Right.
Oh, that really does it because every time I
Yeah.
ask it, I get what I need out of it.
Right.
So I would say don't be dogmatic about the question
For
itself.
sure.
Be dogmatic about the output of what it gives you on its response.
Yeah. Yeah. And being really curious and experimenting with the questions.
Yeah, and by the way, you brought up EQ, and Lencioni brings it up in the smart portion
Hmm.
of Hungry Humble Smart, right? So this is a real thing, and it needs
Yeah.
to exist because people who don't have it they're bad teammates.
Yeah.
So what I look at is there are certain types of roles that are known to have lesser EQ. And I
Yeah.
think what's really interesting about this is being really tuned in to given roles when you need to really dig in and make sure you pull certain core values out of it because the seat is less likely to have it. So I'll give you a simple one. Finance tends
Hmm.
to be highly analytical.
Yep.
Highly analytical, if you ask people, they would generally say, oh, those people are like on the spectrum, right? Jokingly.
Yeah.
Well, people who are on the spectrum tend to have a lesser EQ than
Mm.
not. And so what you
Okay.
realize is there's certain disposition types, there are certain technical types that fall into certain buckets that might generally exemplify less certain core values. And so you go, oh, I need to make sure I really dig into EQ much harder in a finance seat.
Are you saying
And
because the pool of applicants, like you need to find just, you're
they
looking for
tend to
that
index.
small percentage that has a little bit more EQ than their peers?
Totally.
Yeah.
And so for instance, in our world, we deal with a lot of technicians.
Hmm.
Humility tends to be the issue with most of those folks. Like they know they're really good at what they
Yeah.
do and they'll tell you about it. And you're
Yeah.
like, ooh, this is going to be bad. Right. And so you look at those things and you go, I'm just waiting for that glimmer of that moment where that like pops out and you go, no, thank you. And so
Yeah.
it's being tuned in very specifically to those types of things. And I think
Hmm.
that's super interesting is like as you really get kind of more into the idea around the hiring and the vetting of people, you kind of start to realize that there are archetypes. And when
Hmm.
you look for those archetypes, you know then where your kind of guard is up in a way to make sure that we're finding the human that nails it for us.
Yeah. That must be so heartbreaking for hiring for, let's say, technicians, where it's so rare. Like the talent pool is small. Maybe it's a niche industry. How much are you talking the hiring manager off the ledge of like, hey man, I know you need a tech. I know you just closed a bunch of projects, but I promise you, it's not worth it.
Yeah, it happens a lot. And I think what's interesting is people second guess it often.
Mm-hmm.
They say, I've got this need, I've got this pain point, I just got to move. And I go, I would not put that guy on any team,
Yeah.
right? So here's a great one.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about controllers, and I think it's a really interesting one because every company has some level of finance person in their
Yeah.
business.
Yep.
So typically, at a high enough level, that person oversees kind of an HR component as well. It's
Mm-hmm.
common. Well, imagine that I find a really good finance person, super technically minded, right? Hungry, reasonably humble, but they don't have high EQ, and I put them in charge of my HR department. Why on earth would that possibly feel like a smart decision?
Yeah.
They're responsible for HR for all of your humans, right?
It's
Now
in the
you say,
name.
right,
Yeah.
we have a technically minded, highly proficient, great resume, tons of loyalty, right
Yep.
within our budget, and they're about to tank your company culture because they don't understand human emotion.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, right? Like that's red flags, right? But you go, but I need to fill the seat and I got to put somebody in there and I need, right? These people are tuned to want to make their pain go away, and they're actually willing to overlook some of these massive pitfalls that will actually cause them more pain
Yeah.
in the long run. Those are the ways in which I think we have kind of really honest dialogues like, yeah, I would not put this person in that seat, don't do it, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's another great reason to use a hiring expert is aside from being able to delegate from a time capacity standpoint, you also have that neutral third party person who can hold the mirror up to the situation and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what your future is going to look like. Yeah.
Danger. um,
Yeah.
The other one is when you do it enough, you see it, right? You see the patterns. So I think this question about kind of pattern recognition, it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of what we do. You're like, oh, I've seen this before. And it is really interesting. And I think if you don't hire enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Often, frequently, high
Yep.
volume, you wouldn't have the ability to recognize those patterns. In other words, it's kind of fresh to you every time. Just last year, we hired 181 people. Like, since we've been doing this, 450 people. Like, you start to realize, oh, got it.
Yeah.
I've seen this story before. And it's really helpful because now what you're looking for is the off ramp from that. Oh, no, it's really not that way. They're really actually quite good.
Yeah.
Or you go, nope, they've really proven themselves exactly that type of archetype that we think it is. This is a no go for these reasons.
Yeah.
And yet, what you'll see is people in that pain point look back at the resume and go, yeah, but. And you go,
Yeah. Or when they make the wrong hire and they say, "Yep, I saw that red flag early on and I ignored it."
it's a great
Yep.
lesson to learn.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
sometimes you have to touch
exactly.
the stove, right? Ideally, you wouldn't, but sometimes.
I've hired many people in my day and I have touched a lot of stoves. I've gotten much better, I think, but it really depends on how much pressure is going on in the business. Where's my capacity? Am I just running myself into the ground and I'm trying to run and lead a business? It's really easy to let your guard down where you just say, oh, screw it. I just need someone to fill the seat. And I know that they at least fit the seat for most of it, or
Yeah.
maybe they're the right person for the culture.
That question about almost like throwing your hands up and saying "I just need," right?
Yeah.
It's an acceptance of, and I look at that and I go, is that really the strategy, or does that feel like we've surrendered? In the question you asked originally, which I thought was really good, which was like who gets involved and when. You also just brought up a really great point about like people making mistakes in the hiring process. I'd like to come back to that actually. I think it's super helpful.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example from my previous business. Had a really great employee. He typically had a team of one person underneath him. Um, Loved this guy. He was fantastic. No issues with the employee.
Mm-hmm.
When he went to rehire for people underneath him, he was not good at it.
Okay.
So the first time he makes the mistake, my general management theory is I let people run. I let them do what they do. There's a reason why we put them in the seat.
Mm-hmm.
But he makes a bad hire. I say, okay, great. I'm going to get more involved in the hiring process on the second side. So I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
be sitting second chair to him. We're going to go through the process. We get down to two people. I like this person, he likes that person. I realize the other person's not as good.
Mm-hmm.
And what I say is, okay, let's work through this, right? And I'm trying not to just override his decision making.
Right.
Can I show him the other side? Can I help him potentially see something here? Can we let him see the light so he gets there on his own? Nope, he wants to make this higher. And I go, okay, it's not bad, but it's not great. Okay, let's let him make the decision. But I tell him if he picks wrong on the next one, I make the hire.
Yeah.
Right. So now we're getting more and more involved. And I think what that isn't is a surrender. That's exactly the opposite. That is taking command and control when it's necessary and then helping people kind of get to that. He had to make those decisions to learn those lessons,
Yep.
but then ultimately we as the business had to execute. And so on that, it didn't work out. And on the third one, I made the hire.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
you start to realize like there are processes to this. And I think it would be really easy to say, hey, we just need to get from here to there, just break all the processes, move quickly, and who cares? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, when is that ever a good idea? That's gonna work well. So,
Yeah.
anyways, to prove your point, I try to never do that surrender thing because
Yeah,
usually like
for
that's when
sure.
bad things get worse.
Yeah, that's an emotional response, right? You're just in survival mode. So you mentioned earlier talking about moving someone internally into an open position, and you call it sometimes the lazy decision. What's the criteria for when it's the lazy decision to move someone internally into the open position versus the right move?
Yeah, I don't even know that there is a criteria, but I'll
You
tell you
know it
the
when you
very
see
short.
it.
He's it. I would say just make sure you ask the question. And what this
Yeah.
came from was we were looking at shifting an internal employee to a different seat. He was a
Mm-hmm.
great employee, met all of our core values, tons of technical skill, right? And we said, oh, let's have Mike go do this. And we're sitting in our leadership meeting, and somebody raises their hand and goes, are we just making the lazy decision? It was such an astute conversation, like, and,
Love
and
that.
just that read was
Yeah.
brilliant. And I think that's the question to ask. So in other words, what's the criteria? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know there's a criteria other than just ask the
It's
question.
that gut
And
check. Yeah.
correct.
Right.
And then everybody around the room needs to go, okay, are we?
Mm.
But here's the way I would run through the criteria. Once you know the seat, and then you go write the JD. Now
Mm-hmm.
we need to actually write the job post. And a job post is like an advertisement. The JD is like the legal thing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's write the job post. So now we go through the thought exercise. We've put this post out there. If the individual internally that we're hoping we want to move into the seat, if that resume came across for this, would we even consider the resume for that?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, we should probably be interviewing a bunch of other people for the seat. It feels like
Yeah.
we're making the lazy decision. Now, you may know some things about this individual that actually tells you that they could be good at it. But I think that question of if you really wouldn't consider them for that role had they applied from outside, that's probably very telling. Next part, actually have them do that. If you are going to do this, post the job,
Mm-hmm.
begin to get resumes, have that person apply for the role, and have them run through the interview cycle. If they don't succeed in the interview cycle, do not put them in that seat.
And then, especially since you're EOS well versed, how much do you use the people analyzer?
Yeah, I think it makes good sense. I like deploying toolkits that are simple and it's a simple tool. I'm a big fan of is everyone speaking the same language? So my
Mm-hmm.
question is how many people in your organization are using it? And if they're not using it either, well, then it's going to be really tricky. Um, I'm also an and. I think augmenting around a tool. So it can be a starting point. Is it the
Mm-hmm.
finishing point?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really fair question.
Yeah. Yeah, I think especially when we're talking about an internal person, a potential internal move, where you know a fair amount about them, just even doing that initial people analyzer, obviously the core values, figuring out if they're the right person, but then from your perspective, do they GWC this seat?
Yeah.
If it's just no, 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 it's like, hey, would this even be a candidate we interview if they weren't actually in the company? That it just makes it much more straightforward.
Agreed. The GWC portion I think is really great. So in 90IO, which is what we use to
Mm-hmm.
run, EOS and traction with inside of our organization, it gives you the ability to run that analyzer like that for each person in each seat. I
Mm-hmm.
tend to find it to be really, really helpful for me, but I also like it in a team-based approach because,
Yep.
um, I've also sat in other teams, tens, and they'll have a standing right person, right seat issue where they just
Yep.
go through it and say, do we have any? And you're like, no, we're good. No, we're good. No, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that. I love the
Yeah.
idea that weekly we're just cross-checking our work because then what you could say is, I think we have one. Now let's go use the people analyzer.
Yeah.
Everyone go do it for this one person in this one seat. Let's go see where the
Yeah.
problem is.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's fast. And then instead of just talking endlessly about all these things that they're seeing about that person, it really helps to get to the root of the people issue. I know that you work with some companies that are already running on EOS and you run your business on EOS. Seems like
Big
it's
fan.
yeah, you're a big fan. What have you seen it do for your business?
I was running it when it was just me and my business. Like
Love
it's
it.
an organizational function, right? So where am I headed? What do I stand for? Literally, I keep a copy of Traction on my desk and I can prove it to people. It's like got all my notes and the side margins and everything. It's like
Yeah.
well worn.
Yeah.
But I was sitting on a plane one day and I was like, I don't have my core values defined.
Hmm.
I was literally reading Traction, right? I was like, I don't have my core values defined for my new business. I was like, I guess I better go do that. Oh, I guess while I'm at it, I better. Right? And so I was
Yeah.
like, well, where am I going to go put it all? All right, I got to sign up for 90. Now I'm tracking. And so I started just doing it internally for me. And it is absolutely a game changer for companies. When I look at other clients that are running on it and you see well oiled machines doing it, I'm a big fan.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at companies who are struggling, and you start to ask questions, you go, oh, you don't have a method like this, and if you did, it would bring a lot of clarity to people inside of your leadership team and the folks below it. It is like a guiding force for me, and
Mm-hmm.
I wholeheartedly recommend it to other people. And it's why, like, for instance, you and I talk, which is, and if you don't do it today, you're going to need someone to help you stand this up. Don't fight the fight of standing it up. There's people who help you do that. Like, do that. I self-implemented at my last business.
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of the proud few who didn't fail at it. But I like doing stuff like that. And I learned a lot of lessons.
Yeah.
And I just like watching people have an easier time at it, which is why I believe that, implementers are really, really helpful.
I mean, it's definitely possible to self-implement, but it's a very small percentage that really do it well. And it's because they have someone internally, kind of like you, who's memorized traction and knows it in and out and is willing to invest that time. But most of the time, people on leadership are busy doing their leadership role and they'd rather bring in someone else to actually shepherd them through the process and make sure they're not avoiding the parts that are difficult and the conversations that are difficult.
The one thing that I will say about why I believe that implementers are really good for businesses. When you try and do a self implementation, even if you're smart and positive at it and right intention, you're still a part of the mechanism internally.
Yeah.
When an implementer comes in, there everyone's like on a level playing field and following along with that implementer. It
Mm-hmm.
is a very different dynamic.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is a clear use case for why it is super helpful to people.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, we attempted, I think, for 6 months to self-implement, and we did not get very far. We'd block the time and then say, "Oh, we need to talk about this other issue instead." And it was just so much easier to protect that time as a group when you had to show up for someone.
Yeah. The other one would be investment, right? Like I've made the
Yeah,
investment. I don't want to
exactly.
waste the investment. And so I think
Yeah.
there's all these implicit kinds of motivating
Mm-hmm.
factors that happen around it. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I love the method and I think it's just generally helpful for people. In other words, like my position for anybody is at minimum read the book. right?
Yeah,
Next
exactly.
step, start doing one thing that's in it that you weren't doing before. And the more things you do that are in this
Yep.
book, the better you'll be. And what you'll soon realize is the way to get the most out of it is go all in. Like, do the thing.
Yeah, and I'm always happy to send a copy of Traction to anyone. So just let me know if you know anyone who needs a free copy. I'll send it in the mail.
So I was
Um,
actually just sitting in one of our quarterly rocks actually is a leadership team is to read people. And so
Yay!
and so I think what's super interesting for me is like we call it one of our core values is about consistent improvement, Kaizen. And
Mhm.
so I think the idea about what's our book club for the quarter and like this is our book club for the
I
quarter.
love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a people expert, right? And it's all
Yeah.
about still growing and learning. That's excellent. Cool. So I really, really enjoyed this conversation. Before we sign off, let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, our company's called The Co-Team,
Hmm.
and our website is thecoteam.com. And you can reach me at Chris at thecoteam.com. We also have thecoteam.com/meeting. And if
Hmm.
you'd like to book 30 minutes with me, there's a link right there, and you can pick a day and time to do it. We're not high pressure salespeople. It's not how this works. We'd love to talk to you about how we do what we do and show you the way. And if it makes sense to you, we'd love to work with you.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Julia. Really appreciate the time.